so they don't have to redefine it in every statute. So you got to go and stop there to make sure that word hadn't been redefined in there. If it hadn't, then you should go over to a Canadian law dictionary. Now here was a bit of a dilemma. You know, which book would you think is more authoritative here? A big one or a little one? I mean, that's how I thought, right? The big one was enticing, but when I started realizing, hold it, we're in Canada. So it would make sense to stop at the Canadian law dictionary. Then if it wasn't in there, then you could go to something like Black's Law. Because see, Black's Law is American and English jurisprudence. Now that's our heritage, so yes, we're allowed to go there. But there's some words in here that have been redefined different than in here. So we need to stop at that point first. And then if the word we're looking at, we can't find it in any of this, then we could probably go to a good old Canadian English dictionary like Oxford's, Gage's, whatever, and it probably meant what you thought it meant. Now imagine trying to read a statute like that. But that's the process that had to go through, and it really, once you see it, it actually becomes faster and faster and faster. Now there was one word that I ran it through this process many times, I could not believe what I found. What is the meaning of the word includes? How do we use that word? Does this room include chairs? Yeah. We use it as an enlargement, as an add to. I guarantee you go through all, whether you're in the legal world or real world, you can't find the definition of how we use it in any of these dictionaries. Here's Webster's dictionary. Include, to confine, hold, contain, to comprise, to comprehend, to embrace, or involve. Gage's, include, to put, to hold, to enclose within limits. So let's visualize what includes looks like. When something includes something, it is just enclosed it within limits. Okay? So let's jump into the legal world. Go to these law dictionaries. Black's Law, include, to confine within, to hold in an enclosure, take in, attain, shut in, contain, enclose, comprise, comprehend, embrace, involve. You getting the picture? It just means very restrictive. So if I said this room includes chairs, I actually just said this room is a chair. Okay? But when you add the ing, including, may, according to the context, not always, express an enlargement and have the same meaning of or and in addition to, or merely specify a particular thing already included within the general words there to be used. So there's ways to enlarge it. You can go all and includes, also includes, includes without limitation. See, that's almost how we should actually be saying it. This room includes without limitation chairs. And that would have just blown off the restrictive sense of the word. Okay? Now this was probably the hardest word. I don't know how many months I spent on it, because to me it was like, no, it can't be. You know, emotionally I couldn't accept what I was reading in front. So I kept digging and digging, came across a legal maxim. Inclusio unus e exclusio ulterioris. The inclusion of one is the exclusion of another. The certain designation of one person is the absolute exclusion of all others. So it started restricting. So let's take this legal maxim, which is above our emotions and our opinions, and apply that into the Canadian Interpretation Act, Federal Interpretation Act, under the word person. This is the default meaning of person in federal statute unless it's redefined in the statute. Person, or any word or expression descriptive of a person, includes a corporation. Now, does it include anything else? Now, our mind just assumed corporation meant something like IBM or McDonald's, didn't it? But a corporation, in federal statute, when they use the word corporation, it means artificial persons. And we'll show you that as we go. When they need to use an incorporated company, they'll redefine it. In BC, whenever we see corporation in our provincial statute, it actually means an incorporated company. So you can't take one set of rules and apply them to different jurisdictions. There's slight differences. So we'll move forward to that. And again, my search kept looking, and finally this Canadian Styles, it's a government printed manual from the Public Works, Chapter 12. They had words commonly misused or confused. Two words is like, what is the difference between include or comprise? For both of them are restrictive senses, what is the difference? Well, includes implies only part of a whole. Comprise implies all the parts. So water includes hydrogen, right? Water comprises hydrogen and oxygen. So you see the difference? We take that concept and look at it in the legal world. If it was up until today you never heard of the duality of person and law, and you only assumed there was only one person, how could you create a part of a whole? But when you start looking at the duality of it, it's really multidimensional. I haven't counted them all. Somebody said there's like 27 to 30 some odd different artificial persons. They're all different. They're all created for different specific reasons. So when we look at the word person in law, it comprises of natural persons and a whole bunch of artificial persons. So when a statute law says a person includes a taxpayer, does it include the driver? No. Does it include the owner? No. Does it include a natural person, a human being? No. It only includes part of the whole. And it's really easy to see, because ask yourself, when you got your social insurance cards, how many people here got them before they were 16 or something, right? We all got a couple of test laps before we had to use them. Were you allowed to drive? No, because it didn't create the driver entity. You see, they create different entities and they use it. And that supports then the inclusion of one is the exclusion of the other. So we look at this word includes now with that concept of what we learned, and now start applying it within statutes. Okay, the Assessment Act. This one we're not going to understand in the intro, but I left it in here. If you're curious, you'll understand it by going to the bigger course. He goes, land includes land covered by water. This is all we pay taxes on. Now, I know BC has a lot of rain, but I thought this was getting a little ridiculous. B and C were sand and gravel and quarries. So either you live on land covered by water, you live in a gravel pit, or you live on quarry. If you don't live in any, why are you paying taxes? Property taxes. When you understand the illusion of admiralty jurisdiction and water and stuff like that, that makes perfect sense. Now take a look. They already know what the word includes means. Here's out of the Land Act, construction purposes. Includes without limitation. If includes had no limitations, why would they have to put that? See, they know it's a very limited and used word. Here's the land tax deferment. I like looking at this and say, let's throw out all these rules and principles of interpretation. Let's just read this like we read a bedtime story. Okay, just what a word means, okay? So let's take the natural and ordinary meaning of minister, and we'll add the rest of that. Because that's how they tell you. Oh, when you look at a word in a statute, it's the natural and ordinary meaning. They'll use includes as plus that. Okay, fine. See, they can't have their cake and eat it too. So let's go in there and say, okay, what's the natural and ordinary meaning of minister? Well, there's minister at church, minister in parliament, so there's a few of them, right? Okay, so this act refers to a minister plus a person designated in writing by the minister. So if there are no rules or principles of interpretation, that means you can go to the minister at the church, have him designate you in writing to have authority under the Land Tax Deferment Act to go and write notes to all your friends so they could defer their land tax. You think that's how the intent of the statute was created? You see, when you understand, you have to follow the rules, because without that, it could mean anything. Okay, so let's look at Canada Elections Act. Person includes an elector, voter, or candidate. So does that include us? Motor vehicle, I like this one. Accident includes an intentional collision. You go, well, that can't be. I had one last week and I didn't do it on purpose. If that's what you're thinking, you're missing the whole point here. This isn't all about us, it's about them. When you understand your human rights, if you cause damage or even threatened damage, guess what you have? Due process of law. Do you realize how expensive that is? If I can get you to sign up for a nice little driver's license, which is attached to the Motor Vehicle Act, which is basically the contract agreement you've agreed to, and in there I can get you to confess that whenever you say the word accident, you just told me you did it on purpose. Now I'm dealing with just guilty parties, and when there's no need, I have confessions all over the place. That way, human rights is very costly for them. When we start looking at the game from their perspective, it starts making a lot of sense. Now, here's where I basically stopped my search. I mean, for some reason, we have some educators who say, I had no emotional attachment to the word include. Personally, I had a hard time accepting that includes was restrictive. So I kept searching, finally came across this BC government client service agreement. It's basically a tax-free structure contract. We call it a contract for hire for clarity. In there, because this is a contract the government uses to interface with people in society, they wanted to watch the language. In there they had an interpretation section for words used in the agreement. 16.2 says, in this agreement, the words including and includes are not intended to be limiting. So if they weren't limiting in the first place, why would they have had to put it in there? Because they know it's limiting, and because this contract was going to be read the way we normally read, they needed to release the boundaries off it, so in this agreement it would mean the way we use it. So that was basically the end of my search on includes, and you'll see how important that word is as we progress into this. Okay, another way we need to look at it, it's nowhere near as complex, is this word individual. What's the natural and ordinary meaning of individual? Person, she's a clever individual. So that's how we see it. A being, a thing, forming one of its kind, a single person, animal, thing. So this is the real world use of the word individual. When we go into the legal world, it really hasn't changed that much, but it starts focusing a little bit. It goes, here's out of Black's law. It's redefined in Canadian law, so this one sort of overrides it, but they're both relatively the same. It goes, individual, a private or natural person, as distinguished from a partnership, corporation, or association. But it is said that this restricted signification is not necessarily inherent in the word, and that it may, in proper cases, include artificial persons. So what they're saying is, for the most part, whenever you see individual in a statute,